Hey, welcome back. Dan Kennedy, photographer here. I wanted to talk to you today about something I get asked about all the time and something that I do not have, and that is an agent. I don't have an agent. I have two producers who work for me who deal with all the pre-production and the post-production on my photo shoots, but I don't have an agent. I don't have someone actively out there touting for work for me. So what I thought I would do today is call two photographers who I know personally, some of whom have agents and some of whom don't, and ask them a couple of quick questions about what their working life is like with or without an agent. Okay, so first up is legendary portrait photographer. He also shoots ad campaigns and moving image, Tom Barnes. Let's get on the line to Tom. Hey Tom, great to see you, and thanks for jumping on the call. I wanted to ask you about not having an agent. I know you don't have an agent, and am I right in thinking that you successfully run your business without an agent? I think you do, don't you?
I don't know about successfully, but I do I do my very best. Yeah, no, I've been without an agent for a long time now, and I quite love the freedom that it provides. I love the fact that if I fail, it is absolutely on me. The buck stops with me. Plus, also, I love the fact that when I'm dealing with clients, I am dealing with clients. There's no middle person. There's no miscommunication. If a client rings me and says, "Can you do this?" I say yes. Although the big phrase that I did learn quite early in not early in my career, maybe a few years ago, was like, yes, but, right? So I think the thing is, if you are going to be without an agent, you need to be a very good, or good at least, at negotiating and explaining your positions and things like that. And also, when a client says, "Can we have this?" and you go, "Yes, but," it'll either cost you more, or if you want to add a shot in on a day, you're going to have less time for this. And so it's all about explaining the opportunity cost to people who don't maybe understand or necessarily realize what that opportunity cost might be.
Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. And do you think it's probably a hard one to answer as well, but do you think you miss out on anything? Do you ever look at campaigns and think, I might not have been in the running for that purely because you're not represented by an agent, or do you not really think like that?
Try not to think like that. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that sometimes I might have been passed over because I simply wasn't in the room for it. Whereas I think maybe as there have been some jobs that I would have done quite well, or maybe not maybe necessarily maybe better than how it ended up being shot. Sounds a bit arrogant, but the trouble is, if you're going out as yourself, you're trying to get the meetings, you're trying to do all the, show the book and stuff like that, but that's just you on your own. When you have an agent and you're still trying to go out and do the meetings, your agent's also out doing the meetings. So it's basically, there's a bigger team. There's more avenues that your book's going to be seen at. And then also, say, for example, there might be some art buyers or commissioners, and, they don't have maybe as great a book as, another art buyer. An option is always just to speak to some agents. That would be not an easy, but that would be like quite a standard way of doing it. So if you're not then repped, then obviously you're not in contention for that job. So yes, I'm sure it has happened. I try not to think about it too much, obviously. But yeah, I'm sure it happens. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, and also you run a successful business. You're a busy working photographer. You get some great commissions. You've got a really real, varied client base. So it's kind of working, right?
Yeah, this is it, right? Like, and I think the roles of an agent have changed in general. I think historically, people would have maybe got an agent, and then the agent just handles everything, right? You wouldn't necessarily need to. The photographer's job was just go and create. But I don't feel like that's the case now. Now that there's a lot of agents who are also looking after the production side of things, and I think there's huge amounts of. There's been a huge increase in demands on photographers, but also on agents as well. And a lot of them bringing their production in-house has created a huge amount of work, and I'm sure quite lucrative. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, production is something I don't ever want to get involved in, because it's excruciating. The hours, the amount of work that goes into it, and I just don't have that. I'm a very visual person. I don't have the kind of the attention span to really deep dive on a shoot schedule. I just want to be told what I'm doing. So there's I think the role of an agent has just changed in general, and I think there may be less going out and getting the work and more just not necessarily reacting to stuff coming in, but they're busy with all the production on the jobs, and I feel like the role has changed away from purely selling to
Yeah.
now kind of managing a whole load of stuff like this. So it's an interesting one, but I think there's a common misconception that people come in, think they can get an agent, and then that's their career sorted. I just don't feel like that's the case anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Awesome, Tom. Thanks so much. Great to see you.
No, pleasure, Dan. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, so next up is award-winning photographer and director Matthew Joseph. Hey, Matt, great to see you. Thanks so much for jumping on the call. I've got a quick question for you. You have an agent, don't you? And basically, I just wanted to ask you just a little bit about it, what it's like having an agent, how it works for you, how long you've had an agent, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah. Hi, Dan. So, how long have I had an agent for? That is something I actually don't know the answer to. I can work this out quickly. I reckon it's 7 years-ish. I've had different agents in that time.
Yeah.
And the agent question is one that never gets old from those in and out of the industry, and especially it's a hot topic amongst photographers, commercial photographers. Photographers' favourite thing to do with other photographers is to moan about the industry. I think photographers with agents' favourite thing to do is moan about their agents. Rarely does someone come along and go, oh, my agent's awesome, I love them, they get me all the work and I couldn't live without them. Rarely does that happen. So it's a really interesting subject, and it's something that a lot of commercial photographers aspire to achieve for different reasons. I'm not sure if that's still the same now, but certainly when I was coming up and establishing myself, it was an absolute seal of approval. And I think to some degree it still is. An agent is great for many things, but they are not the answer to everything, for sure. So
yeah,
I actually think the best way to describe the absolute assets of a good agent for me in my situation journey are when it's working at their best, they're actually more my manager than they are my agent. I've always had work come to me. That's how because like everyone, like all of us, we have to be our own business managers and marketing managers and everything, and we're used to client relationship managers, and we have a lot of that ourselves. Agents probably once upon a time did have a magic black book of contacts that we couldn't get, but I think those days are past. And yes, they might have been around for longer, so may have more contacts, but there's clients that generally just prefer a relationship with a photographer than they do an agent, I think. So you still, when you're a signed photographer, this is my experience and others I speak to, client relationships are still a huge part of what I do. They don't just get handed over to the agent. The agent can help you get stuff across the line. So for example, when I have jobs come in, they may have come in through my own contacts, my own network, my own meetings, whatever. I'll generally hand that over to my agent, and then they kind of manage that situation going forward. And there's been so many times when I can definitely pinpoint the success of winning the job, because in our line of work, getting a brief and winning a job are two very different things, and are often months and months apart, and a ton of work between yourself as the photographer, the agent, maybe the producer. Between those two things, that's where the agent really comes in. They get stuff across the line, and they push for stuff and advocate for you when you're not looking. And having a cheerleader by your side in that context is huge. There's a level of protection. In fact, I mean, I'm going through a few situations right now with a difficult client on the other side of the world, and it's caused my agent loads of grief and loads of, work, but they are protecting me at every point and looking out for me at every point. And it gives you that distance between yourself and the client, which enables you to have a relationship where there's no awkward chat about money, because you can just always blame your agent or whatever. Agents can be great, and I know there are bad agents out there, and there are good agents. When I've searched for agents, I've been with my most recent agent for 3 years, and the search for that agent was the most. I had a lot more experience and knew what was good and what was bad at that point, and what led me to go with them in the end. And you don't get offers from everyone, or maybe some people do, but I certainly didn't, because most rosters are full. They're always full. So timing is everything. But what you don't know about rosters being full is that there's always stuff happening behind the scenes. People are moving on for different reasons, or agents are letting go for other reasons. So it's always worth an ask, even if a roster is full. But in that process, really came down to a relationship thing and an understanding of, do I feel cared for? Do I feel seen? I didn't want to be part of a huge agency with a roster of 20 plus photographers, but you don't want to be with someone so small that like no one knows who they are. For me, there was a happy medium and middle ground where I felt I could get the care and attention that I needed. And not just that, but you want your agent to really buy into you and what you stand for and fight for you on your behalf. And you don't want them to see you purely as a commercial entity, but you have to remember that that's what you are. You can be best mates with this agent and want to go over there for dinner, meet the family. But if you're not going to make them money, there's kind of little point to that relationship. They have to make you money, but you have to make them money. And it really is this reciprocal dance I think a lot of photographers don't realise. If you're going to look like potential material for an agent, you've got to be a business case of like, well, this person as a commercial entity is making money. So an agent, it's crass, but an agent can come in and go, yeah, I can make my cut off that person, but at the same time elevate them, get them further, win them jobs that perhaps they would have lost at the final hurdle because they didn't have this level of production or support in place. The bigger team. There is so many occasions where I'm frustrated. There are so many occasions where I'm like, oh, I'm so pleased, I'm so grateful. There have been just multiple accounts over the last few years where I travel a lot for my work, as you do, and you have got to get on. You're going to be stuck on a plane for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, but there's this stuff that's going down on this other job that really needs someone's attention. Blah blah blah, and planes have Wi-Fi, but it's not the same, and you've got to be on this call, but you can't be in those situations where you just know that it's being handled. And your work, some of these jobs that I do, the amount of people involved is ridiculous, and sometimes it's the production budgets are big, or there's just a lot of people involved, client side or production side or whatever, and you just don't want to be getting involved with any of that if you can help yourself. And especially when you're on a travel schedule, or when you're I've got like a crazy month coming up where I know that I'm going to be in another country, but on that same day I need to be in 2 PPMs, pre-production meetings, in 2 other time zones, and I have no idea how this is going to happen. But I also know that while I'm on set that day in that country, there's going to be stuff required of me from this other thing, blah blah blah, all that, and that is like mega stressful. But knowing that there is someone who's the gatekeeper to that stuff is just a real game changer. And it might be that they've gone the whole year and all you've done is bring them clients, but they've got it across the line and helped manage things. That's not the ideal, but sometimes that might happen, but there's still an advantage to that. I mean, I've always said, if an agent can bring me 1 job a year that I absolutely wouldn't have got myself, then it's worth it. Or on the jobs that I have done that I've brought to them, they've managed to kind of upsell or just kind of hold fees higher or argue for XYZ. So that means even though they're taking a commission, which is what gets photographers annoyed a lot of the time, they've earned that commission and they've earned you more in the process. So you've got to like zoom out and look at these things big picture, because this, as you can tell, this is a subject I and many others can talk a long time about, and it's very easy to moan about, but ultimately remember it's a business relationship. If it can be a friendly relationship, there's a nice relationship where you support each other and you turn up for each other and you have each other's back, that is awesome. But a lot of businesses don't have that in other industries. So yeah, I've just spouted a lot of information at you there. I can talk a lot more about this if you have more specific questions that you want to go into, because honestly, I can.
No, Matt, that is absolutely brilliant. We'll maybe catch up and do a round 2 at some point, but that's super useful. You've covered everything, so really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No worries, Dan.
Okay, I hope you found that useful. As I said at the beginning, I don't have an agent. I have 2 producers who work with me, and they cost me. I pay them to work for me, but they have my best interests at heart, and they're also not having to deal with other photographers' needs. They're kind of exclusively working for me, but also they're not actively out there touting for new business for me. So on the downside, I don't get that benefit of an agent. So anyway, I hope you heard the stories from the photographers that we've just chatted to. Really interesting and valuable. And let me know in the comments, have you got an agent? Are you considering getting an agent? Let me know. I'd love to hear what stage you're at.